Yes.
Thank you, Sue. That was beautiful. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Shenandoah Valley. My name is Jackie Franklin, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. We are a welcoming congregation committed to supporting one another in our search for meaning and in our desire to make a difference for the good. All are welcome here to share, learn, and serve, and be your truest self. We respect our differences, but we are united on the side of love and justice. We don't have to think alike to love alike. If you are new to UU, I would encourage you to take note of our mission statement on the front of the order of service and the 8 principles which we affirm and promote, which are printed on the inside of your order of service. It's our tradition to welcome new visitors, first or second time visitors, or folks who've been away for a while and are back, and to stand if you're comfortable and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Do we have any visitors on this side today?
Yeah, I'm Kathy, and I live here as well as Florida, and I'm back for your summers.
Hey, welcome. Anybody else over here? Anybody over on this side? Okay, well, welcome to you all. If you're interested in learning more about us or you want to become more involved in our community or receive our newsletter, there are white cards in the back of some of the pews and out in the lobby on the table out there. You're welcome to fill out one to get information to contact you. We do have a couple of announcements today. Marty, where are you? There you are. You have an announcement?
Yeah, please join us for the women's group meeting this Thursday at 5:30 at the Lake Tomahawk Picnic Pavilion. My friend Linda Lowery will be presenting all things creative. I guarantee you'll have a great time. It'll be a lot of fun. And if you have any projects you want to show Linda, bring them. She'll love to see them. Thank you.
Okay, and I have an announcement from the board. We have been meeting over the last few months, this last year, with the police department and fire department, and our safety committee has been doing a lot of work on ways to make our facilities safer. And from those discussions, we have decided that we will be locking the exterior doors of the church after our service begins. A board member will do that, and we'll usually stay out in the lobby in case anybody comes in late. But we feel that this will keep our members and our children and our families safe. And this was a very strong recommendation from the local police department. So we want to let everybody know and be aware of that, and we'll be putting something in the current for folks who aren't here today. Okay, and I would like to read our land acknowledgement statement. UUCSB acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is the ancestral home of the Cherokee and other indigenous people. The Cherokee, through stewardship, understanding, and conservation, survive and thrive in this land. We acknowledge their enduring connection to their homeland. Now, if you'll please silence those cell phones, and we'll begin our service.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
First day of summer. Well, first weekend. Boy, it goes fast, doesn't it? And it comes just as fast. Anyway, our opening words this morning are from Universalist Hosea Ballou. If we agree in love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury. But if we do not, there is no agreement that can do us any good. Let us endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace. Please rise as you are willing and able, and join us in singing our opening hymn this morning. Hymn number 12, O Life that maketh all things new. Hymn number 12.
With all things new.
Our responsive reading is, we're going to do two of them. I forgot to put the other one in. Number 468 will be the first responsive reading, and the second one will be number 583, in honor of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for this nation's adventures. We need one another. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted.
We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid.
We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and in need to be recalled to our best selves again.
We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone.
We need one another in the hour of success, when we look for someone to share our triumphs.
We need one another in the hour of defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again.
We need one another when we come to die, and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey.
All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us.
This is certainly true. Let us do reading 583, please. Young dead soldiers. The young dead soldiers do not speak.
Nevertheless, there are heard in the still houses who has not heard.
They have a silence that speaks for them at night and when the clock counts.
They say, we were young, we have died, remember us.
They say, we have done what we could, but until it is finished, it is not done.
They say, we have given our lives, but until it is finished, no one can know what our lives gave.
They say, our deaths are not ours, they're yours. They will mean what you make them.
They say, whether our lives and our deaths were for peace and not for hope or for nothing, we cannot say. It is you who must say this.
They say, we leave you our deaths, give them their meaning.
We were young, they say, we have died, remember us.
And so we shall. Okay. They're just going to come up and sing, y'all. That's it. That's all we need. Well, can you introduce our guest artists? Are these our guest artists? Or can you introduce your friend?
Maybe when we do the.
Yeah, introduce your new friends. Your friends to us. Susan's husband, Justin.
Like a river
This is the time in the service when we invite you to come up and share a joy, a concern, a sorrow. Diane has the sacred fire, and you have the mic. So, before you
I would like to start with a moment of silence, the tragedy that occurred in Texas this week.
Michael asked me to come up. I'm Linda Metzner, and thank you for your applause. I'm proud of the choir, but I've got my oldest friend who we've known each other since we were 11, Consuelo Nino, and her daughter Juliana are visiting, so say hello sometime.
I think I can be heard.
No, go ahead, pull the mic. Yeah, that's it.
Just pull it down.
That's it.
So I light a fire in thinking about Colombia today. We have elections, and it's a very important decision. So I hold it in our prayers and thoughts.
One light. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Ann Silman, a longtime member of this church. I want to thank all of you for your kind calls and cards and everything. I was in the hospital for 5 days. I'm fine. It had to do with blood pressure and overload of potassium. So they fixed me. My arms are black and blue, but that's the way it is. So thank you very much, everybody. The flowers are from my family, the tulips.
I'm Scott, and I would like to light a candle of joy for barred owls. That's barred, not barn owls, though I'm sure they're perfectly lovely creatures too. I have to preface this by saying that I was not going to come here this morning. Hope is not my default setting. And of course, I held out no hope that Michael would say anything to change my mind, or even cause me to consider a reset. But yesterday morning, about 6 a.m., I'm a morning person, drinking my coffee on my screen porch, very dark outside, I heard the unmistakable call of a barred owl. And they always call in 8 hoots, two hoots of 4. Close as an owl ever gets to being musical. Way more musical than me, so I won't even try to imitate it. But I heard that sound, and he called, or she, 3 or 4 times, very close to the house, very loud. And then off in the distance, I heard another one. And they called to each other back and forth for half an hour. I hardly ever hear them. It's been about a year since I've heard them. I live right on the edge of a large forest. Barred owls prefer river bottoms and swamps, but they frequent the forest behind my house now and then. And that sound just says deep wilderness to me. Kind of like the loons up north. Never in the city, never in the suburbs, only deep wilderness. And it reminded me that privilege of living in comfort just at the edge of a deep woods. And in spite of everything, it made me hopeful. The Bar Dolls made me hopeful. So I decided I would come here today and hear what Michal has to say on the subject. Though I'm pretty sure the Bar Dolls will have the final word. And it goes something like this. Hoo-hoo, 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 hoo-hoo. So I went and did it anyway.
Thank you, Scott.
My name is Jim, and never follow Scott. I was going to come up last week, but there were 17 of us up here, and we ran out of candles. So I just wanted to share a joy and a concern. The concern is my wife is having AFib heart problems, but true to Aline, she's got it all managed. And this morning I dropped her off at the airport. She's going to go play for 3 weeks with her brother out in California. But do give her a thought. We've got some upcoming procedures, and don't know when those are going to be yet. The great news is, the joy is, I got to be with Finley twice in the past 2 weeks. Finley's our foster son, former foster son, and Nathaniel. We swam in their pool, and last Friday, they jumped in a bouncy house in the shape of a monster truck, which was just wonderful. And on the 9th, I get Jace, our second foster son, who's well situated in his new family. On the 9th, I get him all to myself for 24 hours to help the family out. And on the 12th, I get to attend his first birthday. So great news on the former foster folks.
I'm Larry, and I came up here with two concerns and a joy, but Jim just gave me another joy, and it was the visual of seeing Jim swimming in one of those little rubber ducky pools, you know, that was 4 inches deep. I'd love to see it. My two concerns and my joy all have to do with the Asheville Storytelling Circle, of which I'm a proud member. The first concern is James Gregory, who is a member of that group, who is about 80, I think, and who is in a rehab center in Mars Hill, thank you. Because he fell, broke a leg, and did some other damage, and so he's in there until he can get to walk again. So Marty and I went up there yesterday to see him. We got in, found out that he now has COVID. So that's my concern. My joy is that next Sunday, June 5th, at 2 o'clock, so after service, go home and have lunch, and then go down to the White Horse Black Mountain, where 3 members of the Asheville Storytelling Circle, including moi, will be telling stories, so y'all come. And my second concern, one of those 3 tellers was to be Donna Marie Todd, who many of you have seen or know. And Donna Marie was helping at a friend's wedding. It was outside, it was dark, and she fell on some uneven dirt, broke her leg, and did some other damage, and she is now home, very painful, and cannot be at June 5th telling, so somebody's taking her place. So keep her in mind as well.
I'm just going to stand up here and speak loud. My joy is that my husband is here today. And my concern is just that I guess it's my age. All of a sudden I have 2 different long-distance friends, so I can't really go to see them, who are both struggling with terminal illnesses. So that's the trade-off, I guess, as you get older. That happens, but it's sad, and it makes you take a look at your own mortality too. So anyway, and I apologize for being so late.
Hi, I'm Jane Carroll, and as most of you know, our New Americans, a family that have been with us for about 4 months, do have their own place to live now. Yeah, I wanted to share that they're in Black Mountain, so close to many of you now. And they're in a transition period and their needs are changing, but they still have a lot of needs. So stay tuned for how you can help. One little thing at the moment is that they need some size 4 diapers for the little girl who is now walking and still precious. So thank you all.
I'm Andy, and just an update on my dear friend Deborah, who had a heart attack on Easter and is out of the Care Partners rehab and staying with her niece and doing well, and the only thing she can't do yet is drive. So she is well on her way to mending. And I'd also like to light a candle of remembrance and sorrow for my friend Rich Wash's father. He lived in Florida, he was 101, and his younger son came to visit a couple of weeks ago and unfortunately passed on the COVID virus to him. And Sydney did die this past week of COVID, comfortably in his sleep at 101, and his other son Rich was with him, so it was a happy ending in a way. But just a candle of remembrance for a wonderful man.
I'm Sue, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about how much fun and how exciting and interesting and satisfying it is to live where I live at Earth Haven. This was about 2 weeks ago. We had a wedding celebration with a big tent and umpteen people, and the bride is a neighbor and the groom was Hispanic, so we had this lovely diverse community there. We had Asian food and we had a taco truck. I mean, and last weekend we had Doug Elliott, the naturalist, come and talk to us and sing, and he had a band, and we had umpteen people from the area there. This weekend we have 40 people staying at Earth Haven for the Earth Haven Experience Week, which gives them a taste of what it's like to be there. We have 2 people staying at our place. Yesterday we had 40 people come and look at our house. So that's what life is like there, and it's exhausting, but it's really fun.
Hi, my name is Joy. I almost knocked this whole thing over. I have kind of a mix of joys and concerns. Some of you might remember, because I spoke about it quite a while ago, I had been seeing this wonderful gentleman for quite a while, a college professor who, little by little, was getting confused, and I mean scary stuff. Like we were in the car one day, and he was just about to make a left on red. So a sweet man, a lovely man. So he had Lewy body, Alzheimer's, dementia. It's like, how could that have happened to him? So he was in Brooklyn, I was in Connecticut, that was all lovely. His daughter I adore, she's in Vermont, but she's gonna be down in Brooklyn to have a ceremony to honor John's life. So I feel very strongly, I know I'm in North Carolina, but I feel like I need to go to Brooklyn. And this is incredibly sweet My brother is flying down to here. I really don't love those drives. It's 12 hours. I've stayed overnight, 5 out of 7, and he's literally driving back to Connecticut with me to make it easier. So I just, and my kid sister said, you and the dog can stay at my house. Oh, I'm sorry. I just remembered this quote that I love. And you might too. I hope. This is by Maya Angelou. Life loves to be taken by the lapel and be told, I am with you, kid, let's go.
Michael, I'm very conscious of your time, and I want to hear your whole service, so this is going to be fast.
Take your time, I got all day.
I rarely come up with a joy, but this put a smile on my face yesterday. I have 5 nieces and great nieces and nephews by the same niece that are like my grandchildren. I spend as much time with them as I can, and I spent time with them yesterday at my sister's house. And I had been trying all day to talk with my niece about taking 2 of them on a beach trip with me. I couldn't take all of them. Their ages 9, 7, 5, 3.5, and 2. And so I was going to ask her about taking the 2 oldest with me. So after dinner, we were sitting around the table. Everybody had left except for my niece, her husband, and the 5-year-old, and he was busily eating his dinner. And I looked at them and I said, Angela and Russell keep begging me to come down and visit them at the beach. And I'm thinking about doing that in June. And I'm just thinking, and all I did was raise my hand and I put up my 2 tallest fingers, and they knew what I was talking about. And the next thing I heard was the 5-year-old saying, why can't I go? I mean, you know, kids are so smart.
Kids are smart, of all ages. I want to read you the names, some of the names of the people who were killed in Texas the other day. I couldn't get hold of them for some reason. This is from USA Today. I tried to do this on the 26th. You don't have to light a candle, obviously. And then we're going to have a meditation, and you'll have your time of silence. Some of the people we don't have ages for. Eva Morales, teacher, was 44 years old. Irma Garcia, another teacher. Josiah Garcia, age not confirmed. Javier Xavier Lopez, 10 years old. Ileana Cruz Torres, age not confirmed. Jose Flores, 10 years old. Jelaya Silguero, no age given. Layla Salazar, 10 years old. Jace Lubanos, 10 years old. Alethea Ramirez, 10 years old. Tess Maria Mata, no age given. Alexandria Lexi Rubio, no age given. So, I want to share with you as a meditation a poem written by Amanda Gordon. So center yourselves. It's called Hymn for the Hurting. Center yourselves as you do, and then we will have a time of silence afterwards. Everything hurts. Our hearts overshadowed and strange, minds clouded and made dumb. We carry tragedy, terrifying and true, and yet none of it is new. We knew it as home, as horror, as heritage. Even our children can't be kids. Can't be. Everything hurts. It's a hard time to be alive and even harder to stay that way. We are burdened to live these days and at the same time blessed to survive them. The alarm is how we know we need to be changed, that we must differ or die, that we must prevail or try. So though hate cannot be ended, it can be transformed in a love that makes us live. May we not only mourn but give, and may we not only hurt but act. May our signed right to bear arms never blind our sight to shared evil. May we choose our children over chaos, and may never another innocent be lost. Maybe everything hurts, our hearts overshadowed and strange, but only when everything hurts may everything change. And now, while our minds are one, for this brief moment, I leave you with the eloquence of silence. And so it is. I will now ask you to give generously for this morning's offering. And I thank you ahead of time for your generosity.
Wouldn't that be the day? the morning, wouldn't that be the day? The news would sound for miles around, and the stars would dance on the Milky Way. Oh, 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 if I could ring like a bell, if I could ring like a clapper on a heavenly bell, to tell the world that the wars are over, wouldn't that be the day? Wouldn't that be the morning? Wouldn't that be the day? The news would sound for miles around, and the stars would dance on the Milky Way. Oh, 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 if I could ring like a bell, if I could ring like the clapper on a heavenly bell, to tell the world that the wars are over, wouldn't that be the day? And wouldn't that be the day?
Thank you again for your generosity. Let's do this. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about hope, and in a lot of ways, it's like love. It's not rational. It doesn't make sense sometimes. It's hope sees beyond the obvious. And at times it even makes us seem naive at times. But without hope, what else do we really have? And so as life presents to us the challenges of a pandemic and more to come, rest assured, of economic strife, of racial unrest, it is worth considering the power of hope. Many people are suffering in body, mind, and spirit, mentally, physically, and emotionally, because they don't have any hope. They see no way out of this malaise, of this lack of civility, of these wars and rumors of wars. They have no hope regarding the future, and it's simply a difficult time. I once heard one of my favorite motivational speakers say that hoping is not a process, and I get that. There has to be footwork. You can't just wish willy-nilly for things to change. You just can't sit idly by. Henry David Thoreau was once quoted as saying that it's okay to build sandcastles in the sky. Nothing wrong with that. But eventually, you have to put foundations under them. Reflections on the importance of hope can be found in pretty much every religion, philosophy, literature, and any inspirational writings. Baruch Spinoza said that there is no hope that's not somehow mingled with fear, and no fear that is somehow mingled with hope. Desmond Tutu reminds us that hope is being able to see the light despite all of the darkness. Hope is broadly defined as an emotional state that promotes the belief in a positive outcome, but it's much, much more than that. And however you define it, however any of us define it, we need hope. And we need to be able to embrace it. Now, having said that, though, there are times, and I can't speak for you, but at least for myself, does hope really make a difference? I mean, does it really? Is it just a way of being in denial? But faith and hope are closely linked, but they're different. Hope is a precursor to faith. And what I mean by that is that while faith is believing and trusting in something that you cannot see, hope is imagining that there's something there to even believe and trust in. It is the belief in what could be. Hope redefines what is probable, and it really does open the path to what we call impossibility. Dr. King said that faith is taking the first step when you can't see the rest of the staircase. Faith is putting trust in the universe, for instance. This is just an illustration. Let's say you have a financial difficulty, and so you want to have faith that you can work this out. But hope opens the door to even let you consider that there may even be a way out. And it sounds like semantics in a way, but they're so intertwined. Without hope, though, there can be no faith. Because you cannot even begin to visualize, to contemplate the things that you would imagine. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Because you have to be able to see what you want. You may not change the rest of the world, but you have to see what you want. This is why we have war in Ukraine, and we have people getting shot because of the color of their skin, or because people just go off, and yet our brother here can talk about the joy of Finley. It's both and, it's not either or. And so some people feel guilty that their life is going well amidst all this chaos, but that's useless, because there will always be this, to a greater or lesser degree. Mother Teresa was right. You want to go change the world, go home and love your family. That can be a challenge in and of itself. So while faith is the result of a current belief system shaped by experience, hope is looking at a future state of affairs, a different state of affairs. And so faith and hope are intimately connected, but you can't have one without the other. And so truly, faith is the substance of things hoped for, but the evidence of things not seen. Proverbs tells us, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. Put simply, hope involves the will to get there, even though you may have many divergent ways of getting there. Now, from a more secular perspective, you may find this interesting. There's actually scientific evidence, for you scientists out there, that hope changes us, physiologically and psychologically, and that it really does make a difference. In a book entitled, and I did not read the whole book, but I did get it, because I have to do research for these things, and so I got to at least read the introduction. And I take it to goodwill. But this is a wonderful book, and it's entitled The Psychology of Hope. You can get there from here. It's by a brother by the name of Charles Snyder. And he describes his definition of hope as the ability to engage in a positive goal, but it's about your thinking. It's goal-directed thinking. It's comprised of two components. It's agency, which is willpower, and pathways, which is way power. He considers that hope is the sum of the willpower and way power you have to achieve in order to reach your goals. Snyder's hope theory is the most is the most widely used theoretical definition of hope in psychology today. An example of a pathway, he said, would be, there are lots of ways around my problem. Agency would be, I will energetically pursue my goals. And so I'm talking with this on the micro level and the macro level. Because the paradox is, you're not going to change the world. Not unless you got that bug that you really feel. But you will change yourself. And by changing yourself, you change the world. As far as your little tentacles can get you. Snyder offers a metaphor. He's one of the top researchers in what is now called hope research. In his model, which he calls adult hope scale, the adult hope scale, he says that hope, you can measure it, if you think of it, hope as a rainbow, a prism that has this kaleidoscope of all these different colors. I think of the rainbow flag, or GBLTQ, for the GBLTQ community. That rainbow with all of these lights and all these colors. He says that these colors make us think of what is possible. He says hope is a personal rainbow of the mind. He also says, for some of you who may need to hear this, that hope can be learned with practice, because certain attitudes support it. One of them is patience. An ability to tolerate delays, a willingness to let events unfold as they should, which is just a nicer way of saying, don't be a control freak. The other is courage, an attitude of confidence even when facing the unknown. The third one is persistence, the determination to keep going no matter what happens. We can have hope, and we can say all will be well, and we really mean it. But you have to let go of the strings of, I have to see the outcome of it. Some of the things that you're working for today, whether it's globally or whether it's individually, you may not live to see. And you have to be okay with that. You have to, there can't be strings attached. Thank you. I take that as an amen. And so hope is the basic ingredient of optimism. And it's a tendency to dwell on the best possibility, not having your head in the sand. It's also a frequent companion of another spiritual practice, and that's called enthusiasm. The greeting, be of good cheer, puts it well. And so hope is what Freud says that guilt makes civilization work. He's got a point, but I would say hope does as well. Now, you could be a hopeful pessimist who makes negative predictions about the future, but has confidence that things will improve in your life, and there's no value judgment there. I see that now in my own personal life when I look at where our country's going. I have hope that we'll get through it, but I see some difficult days ahead. But what is more common is, or you could be a hopeless optimist who feels personally that doesn't matter. It's all going to turn out all right. Que sera, sera. It'll all be good. Here's a telling expression: hope for the best, but expect the worst. The more, hey, sometimes the more likely outcome is, however, the worse. When we are without hope, though, we fall victim. It's easy to fall victim to such negativity. We forget the old Vedic saying that this, and this is important, there are times when life gives us knowledge to learn. And there are times when life says you have to become the knowledge. Do you understand what I'm saying? Learning is here, right? But when you become it, when you experience it, you go beyond. Like there are times in my life I don't need faith. My Christian friends flip when I say this. Because I know. Some things I know, like when I know I turn off this light, when I hit the switch that will go off. But I know that because I've experienced it. So there's sometimes you don't need faith. I know this will happen because it's happened to me. That's what I'm talking about. Life has its challenges. Jerome Groopman is an oncologist. He's written a book called The Anatomy of Hope. I did read this book, How People Prevail in the Face of Illness. He asked the question of whether there is a biological mechanism whereby the feeling of hope can help you recover from an illness. He writes about everything from giving a terminal patient false hope by not telling her the truth, to bluntly taking away all hope from a patient by saying, this is done, you need to get things in order, to finding that any patient needs information, choice, and understanding, or else they have no hope. They have no hope. He says, to hope under the most extreme circumstances is an act of defiance that permits a person to live his or her own life on his or her own terms. So hope is what? Hope is about human connection. Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel reminds us that just as despair can come to one another from only human beings, though I'm not sure, I think we can get hope from the animal kingdom as well. But that's just me. But he says that it can only come from human beings. We can only give that to one another. Soren Kierkegaard tells us that hope is a passion for the possible. Your vision increases the chances that you will achieve your goals. And this is another interesting thing, because even through all that's going on in the world, people still have hope. Dr. King says that we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here this morning. What's the use? What I want you to hear are these three things. To increase hope for a better life during a pandemic or war or anything, take the following steps. Number one, imagine a better future. Imagine it. And detail what will make it so. I was talking to a friend the other day on Facebook, and she was talking about after all the shootings and the madness, she said, well, what we need is for everybody to love one another. And I was like, what? We don't have time to wait for that. But there are people like that. It's almost this naivete. If we all could just love one another, it'd be wonderful. But that's not going to happen. 8-9 billion people are not going to hold hands and say kumbaya. President Putin, I just want to love you. I know you love me. I mean, I'm being facetious, but it helps, but we can't wait for that. You know, so I reminded her that Dr. King said you can't legislate love, but you can create laws in that context so you can keep from lynching me. But whatever the grievance is, you know, I can't make you love me, or vice versa. But I can have some love that says, if you do this to Reverend Carter, this is going to happen to you. But it's mind-boggling how simplistic people make this thing. Imagine a better world. See it. What would that look like for you? Envision number two. Envision yourself taking action. Whatever that action is. It can be go home and love your family, but see it. And number three is you have to act on it. You have to act on it. Why do people continue to hope? Because history has shown that what you believe is possible becomes possible. And again, I'm not talking about being the savior of the whole planet, but you can improve your condition, because the way you train your mind, you contribute to what's going on in the world. Einstein said that the most important question that you can ask yourself is the universe a friendly place or not? Because your answer to that question will dictate the way your life unfolds. If you think life is a bee and then you die, well, what do you think is going to happen? Life is going to say, okay, well, this is, because that's the vibration you're giving off. That's what you're sending out to people. This, again, this is quantum physics. It's not New Age. It's old wisdom being rediscovered. Some people say it differently. It's done unto you as you believe. You reap what you sow. Call it what you will. Science has proven the link between research and what the researchers find in physics. So we have to somehow catch ourselves and cease to see the difficulty that some of the things that we want, and start to see the ease in which it could happen. And this takes what? Imaginations. I should have said to my friend, what would that look like if 8 billion people just loved each other? Because you got to see it. Einstein said you need imagination to create the world that you want. Imagination is everything. It is the preview to life's coming attractions. This is what Einstein tells us. It is the preview to life. If you can't see it, it will never happen. I'll never lose weight. You probably will. All men are dogs. You're probably fixing to meet the next one. Because you're right, whether you think you can do it or not. Whether you think you can do something or whether you think you can't do something, you are right either way. The bottom line is, in the end, only 3 things matter. How much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully, hear this, you learn to let things go that weren't meant for you. Those 3 things. Some things in life, Carl Jung reminds us that the most important problems cannot always be solved. They have to be outgrown. Happiness is an inside job. Howard Zinn wrote this. We're almost done. Get out there in that beautiful day. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, we see that, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history determines our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of the world in a different direction. It's not Mickey Mouse. When people say that, it's because it's laziness. It just depends what your intentions are. If you want to save the world, you're going to need some tongues, because people are not going to act the way you think they should act. They're going to get a hemorrhoid or something worse. But if you say, I can change my surroundings, my part of the garden, if you will. You don't have to change the whole garden, just the part that's assigned to you. Then this stuff works. And I know it does, because I see it with me. I'm living proof, as are you. The only difference between me and you is that I believe it. Science says, show me and I'll believe. Faith says, believe and I'll show you. If we do act in a small way, we don't have to wait for Star Trek utopia. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, it's a marvelous victory. Hope lifts our eyes, ladies and gentlemen. It forces us to keep walking and searching and loving and longing. Jane Goodall reminds us that hope is the virtue by which we take responsibility of our lives. Why? Because hope always asks us for something. You got to give something. The past may be in your head, that's true, but the future's in your hands. So be of good cheer. Or to coin a phrase by Wendell Berry, be hopeful even when considering all the facts. And this simply, my friends, is the power of hope. Let's go home. We're going to keep talking about it in some way, shape, or form. Hope. Okay, we're going to say yes to life. And number 6, just as long as I have breath. Please stand as you are willing and able. We are modeling this. And so I want you to remember that hope and promise. I want you to remember that you are indeed a unique and needed part of it. You have to remember. I'll remind you. You remind me. Okay? So live its beauty. Go out here and tell its story. And go in peace. I'll see you in 2 weeks.